past couple days, I pulled out my stock of these early electric fuel pumps. Most of these were on the 1960s era MFI fuel injected cars. And these have become so rare and hard to find, they're almost like gold. Any of the old 230, 250, 280 SLs, the 280 SEs, any of the 6 cylinders of that era with fuel injection are going to need this pump. There are no replacements, they're no longer made. So I've got a bunch of components here I'm going through to just see what I can do to put some of them back together. Now some of them I won't put back together. You know, if I feel that I can sell some parts off and somebody may be able to rebuild their own pump, you know, maybe with a good center section, or maybe their motor shot, I've got a couple extra motors. But before I do that, I want to put some good ones together. This one is a really good pump that I resealed, but I only resealed the lower half. So I really need to take it apart and reseal the upper section and maybe even replace the brushes. And so what I did here this past week was I decided to upgrade my kit to include new brushes for the motor and new screws. These are zinc plated screws of the correct design with lock washers. Let me show you the things that are included in my basic kit, and I'll explain why you need these and what type of problems they solve. I supply these 2 seal kits. They're O-rings, they're specially sourced O-rings that fit these pumps. This is for the lower section. What the lower section does is there's a large O-ring that goes here on the bottom plate, and then another large O-ring that goes here that seals this bottom section to the center section here. And then there's another O-ring, this large round O-ring here goes right in here. It's fairly simple to replace this lower seal kit. But the problem is a lot of times that won't solve the leak problems. And that's the reason for these O-rings. These pumps tend to leak. They tend to leak fuel before they actually fail. Now, if you let the car sit for a long time, they'll gum up and they won't turn over, and you need to take them all apart and clean them up. And when you do that, you're going to need new seals, or it's going to leak when you put it back together. So when you get into this upper seal kit, you have to take the upper section apart. You have to take the motor off the center section like this, and there's an O-ring that goes here on this housing, and there are 2 O-rings that go right in here on the electrical contact points. The problem is you have to unsolder the wires to pull these out to get these smaller O-rings down in the holes. And while you've got this all apart, you probably want to change the brushes, because a lot of times the brushes are going to look like this, and it may run okay, but it may not run for long. And so that's one of the new upgrades to the kit. You'll get 2 of the correct size brushes that you can now unsolder here and resolder into your center section. Then I include all new hardware, as I said earlier, and we've got a couple other things in the kit, you know, cleaning supplies. But this here, you might laugh at this, but this is really handy. When you're working on one of these pumps, to try to keep it upright while you're doing all this, I really decided I needed some way to hold this in position. There you go. So you can actually work on the pump without it tipping over and falling over while you reassemble it after you've taken it apart and completely cleaned it up. And then we also provide, you know, some assembly lube for when you reassemble it, and some silicone grease to lightly coat the O-rings during the process of assembly. And of course, the Scotch-Brite pad is one of the best ways to clean these pumps. And by the way, because this is old fuel that stains these pumps, the best solvent I have found to clean them up is lacquer thinner. That's right, good old lacquer thinner. Just make sure you wear some good gloves and you work in a ventilated space. So if you have a pump that's showing signs of leaking fuel, or maybe it's intermittent, maybe it runs sometimes and doesn't run, that may be an indication that you need new brushes installed. So now when you open up one of these early MFI short pumps, we call this the short pump because there's a longer pump that came out before this pump that we do not have parts for. We do not have anything to help you rebuild those other than the bottom O-ring. But since there's no replacement pumps for these cars, you have a couple options. You can try to find one, but it's going to be hundreds of dollars. Mark my word. I remember when these were last available new, Some of them were approaching $2,000. That's right, $2,000 just before they went totally out of production. So good used ones, by the way, are not going to be cheap. After cleaning and carefully inspecting all these fuel pump parts, I came up with 2 assemblies that are complete and are very rebuildable. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to offer them to someone who wants to finish the rebuild themselves, and they could save some money. Both these pumps run well. They have good lower section, good impellers, and I will include, along with these parts here, the complete kit, including the brushes and the hardware and all the seals, and you will get complete instructions on how to do this so that you can rebuild it yourself. It's not difficult, but it's just time consuming, and I've got so many projects around here, I thought, well, maybe I'll just pass these on to some other 1960s enthusiast who wants a pump or who needs a pump, because, like I said, these are getting harder and harder to find. So I want to show you how these run, both of them. I don't know if you can hear it or not. I'll put it up close to the microphone. Nice, smooth operation. Every pump has its own little unique sound to it. All right, and let's try this one. Hear that? Hear the difference in tone? But they're both running smoothly with not a lot of vibration. So you start out with a good running pump. You want to make sure that you don't have busted off studs and a lot of corrosion around here, because that makes these very difficult to rebuild. And then these lower sections with good impellers, the hardware, the brushes, the seals, everything. You can do this yourself. Literally, you can do this yourself and save some money. So if you're interested in any of these pumps or pump parts or my complete new deluxe kit, just check them out on my website. I'll put some link in the description below this video.